What's going on? I'm Tony with Fast Intentions. We manufacture aftermarket exhaust systems for Nissan Z cars for the past 20 years. Nissan USA has given us 1 week with this vehicle to give our thoughts, impressions, and reviews. The 2023 Nissan Z. So Nissan's given us the keys to this 2023 Nissan Z Sport model. And we have been able to put it through the paces already. We're gonna to continue to put it through the paces even more. We've driven it through the canyons. We've driven it on the street, highway driving. Right now we're in Angeles Crest, world-renowned, Southern California. Such an amazing opportunity to get this car early. Put it in enthusiast hands. Let us have the opportunity to give our feedback, what we think of this car, before it's even in production here, readily available in the States. So we're super excited. We're gonna get after it. Let's see what this car is about. Let's dive right in. Let's talk exterior, aesthetics, and functionality. Up front, we have this massive opening. Air conditioning condenser, heat exchanger, getting a decent amount of air. We have our crash support in the center, so obviously there's a restriction there. We have an opening on top and an opening on bottom. Room for improvement. Taking in a nice vast amount of air with this giant mouth, right? Like a shark. Cooling mods definitely underneath. Beautiful body line coming up the hood. From side profile, biggest thing I pick up right away is this hard, sharp line coming up. Done for aerodynamics as well as aesthetics. I think they did a really nice job in this front section here, where we come to this point right at center below the Nissan logo. Very cleanly done. Like the headlights, I feel they fit the front end fairly well. They have a nice teardrop shape to them. They come to a point in the front as well as the back. They're not obtrusive or where they feel like they're out of place. They mold into the body, I think, exceptionally well, and it feels as a complete unit, so it does not feel like an afterthought. Hard to pick up maybe in camera, but we have two more hard edges here, brakes in the hood, that try to accentuate the body lines a little bit more. Now, on a dark shadow gray vehicle, it's hard sometimes to pick up those body lines. For an 18-inch out-of-the-box wheel, not a bad design. This will make a lot of people happy that are going to buy this car and keep it in stock form. Brakes are another story. Small, under brake for spirited driving. 2-piece, 2-piston. Definitely room for improvement there. It's got Yokohamas on it. Now, I don't know if these are what they're going to come with from the factory, or since this is a media outlet vehicle, that they put different tires on it for that. So we'll reserve judgment there on those. Impartial to the mirror design, I feel maybe a little bit larger, have some sharper edges in the 370Z, a little bit more viewing area from the backside. I like that about it. This A-pillar region and windshield region feels very similar to a 370Z. We know what we're working with as a chassis. There's a lot of similarities. It's practically on a 370 chassis with a lot of refinements and improvements. Roofline seals, it feels exceptionally similar. B-pillar feels the same. This region in here feels identical to a 370. A little bit different styling down here with the sill, as well as this little winglet that comes out with more of like a rigid plastic look to it. It's gonna hold up better over time. It's not gonna scuff into a clear coat as you would if this was painted all the way down. Don't know if the performance version or the Nismo, obviously the Nismo is gonna have different sills on it, but if the performance version is different. I think they did a nice job on the door handle, sitting flush. And they created this nice cutout here. so you can get your fingers in. I do see it being potentially problematic for anyone that has long nails. This is going to scratch up over time. What you could do is you could go to a vehicle wrap shop and you could do a clear bra on this little region here. And I think that's a way to protect it. Nice. Moving on to my favorite part of a Z car. Right here. C-pillar, quarter window, the ass, the hip, right? The booty. Beautiful body line coming down. Beautiful iconic Z logo. Beautiful job with the quarter window. We have this brushed aluminum looking piece of plastic here as a trim piece. You know, you could probably do some sort of like a monochrome thing where you paint it to color match the car. We actually even have had suggestions that we should create our own emblem, since I don't believe this is light up. It's just purely here for aesthetics and obviously iconic. It'd be pretty rad to have a Fast Intentions branding logo there to keep that nice same chrome look. We would essentially do the logo in a very similar retro feel with the black. We would just replace the Z with the logo. If you're interested in that, let us know. Moving on back to the back window, it tails off. It has like a waterfall effect where it tails off nicely. And again, this being the very entry-level model, so a performance version may have some sort of wing or some sort of dovetail. Beautiful part of the car as it waterfalls off and it falls off. This has very 1990 300ZX taillight feel to it, right? This is what they were going for. Twin turbo 3.0 liter, twin turbo 3.0 liter. Two cars have that and synonymous together. Taillights, I think they've done a superior job. Dating back to the 300Z, I think these are the best looking taillights, and this is the best looking rear end we've had to date with this vehicle. Personal preference. Impartial to the valance. You know, you have your backup sensors, which is really cool. You have sensors all around the car that they actually gave you in the base model or the sport model. And again, sport and base are the same in the 2023 Nissan Z. Performance model, which is going to come out for about $10,000 more, is equivalent to the old sport model in the 370Z. So keep that in mind when you're hearing that. It has this nice little cutout here where I actually prefer this over the older 370Z. And being an aftermarket exhaust manufacturer, we spent a lot of time back here lining up tips, doing installs, prototyping things. And I feel that in this iteration, what it's done is it's giving the car a larger stance, a larger footprint, a larger feel, where it's making it feel a little bit more beefy here, a little bit more robust. And when we put a larger 4.5-inch tip back here, and we have a lot of cool things coming for this car. Stay tuned. You'll see in a couple months when we get ours. It helps fill it all out a little bit better versus the tip just sitting there essentially in space. And they did a decent job with the last generation over the 350Z. Feel like they've improved upon it every single time. Nissan logo is beautiful, how it's brushed and not everything's chrome on the vehicle. They did a nice little job putting the trunk release right here inside the hamburger, directly below the wording, which is really cool. We're able to get all of our gear. You lift the bonnet. We're able to get all of our gear in the boot, in the trunk. We're going to touch on the interior feedback a lot more later. When you shut the deck lid in the back, it has a very solid, stout feel to it. And it doesn't feel overly heavy like it did on some of the previous generations. So we have our massive gas door over here on the passenger side, right-hand side if it's US-based car. Very similar to the 370. I don't see really any changes here. It doesn't feel like it's inset anymore. You have this little spillage area here. It's nice and high, so as you go to put your pump in, you know, you shouldn't essentially find yourself scratching it. They've given you a nice location to store your cap. That's nice. It's not dangling off or you're trying to hang it on to some little tiny little piece sticking up. That was a nice thought there to think about the consumer. Z emblem here, beautiful. I do definitely see over time this being painted gloss black. This rectangular area here between the two taillights, I definitely see that's going to get scratched up. So you're just going to want to be careful with that. You have your backup camera right here, which is awesome that this car has it from the factory. And you have these little rear diffuser wannabe aesthetic things that obviously do nothing for performance or downforce, but they give you a little bit of styling from the factory. So that's kind of cool. All in all, that's the walk around. Those are our thoughts. And in stock form, I think it's really a beautiful car. I don't think there's too much that I could knock on it, too much I would essentially change. And I think the designers and the engineers did a really superb job in terms of aesthetically making enough of a leap from the 370Z to the new Nissan Z. So I've been able to put some seat time in it thus far, and I've definitely found the push point. We are in the sport or base model, and I just always reiterate that because it could be exceptionally confusing without a little clarification. Base model is going to come with the small brakes, sport model, see, you just did it, which is equivalent to base, and the 370 is going to come with smaller brakes, smaller sway bars, no limited slip differential, no synchro rev. And from a performance standpoint, that's probably about the gist of it. From a handling standpoint, I can outdrive this car exceptionally easy. I definitely was able to get it to push and understeer without too much effort. And I was driving it, I would say, about 55, 60 through a turn. Was able to get a little bit of push through it. Obviously, we kept it safe within the confines of the limits. We're not trying to push the car to the absolute edge, nor myself. Everybody wants to get home safe. Nissan wants to get their car back in one piece. Acceleration's great. Shift points are nice. The gearing's great. And I don't know what this car comes with for final drive gear ratio in the rear end. It's definitely got good get up and go when you give it acceleration in every gear. It feels a little flat when you power shift or shift relatively hard, top a second to bottom a third. I do feel a little bit of a stutter, a little bit of a hesitation, and then it obviously kicks in relatively quickly. It's a fun car to drive in the canyons, in stock form. Very responsive. The steering, for being electric steering, I give the steering, an A-, maybe a B+ at worst, right in there. It's fairly responsive. I get decent engagement. You can have a lot of fun with this car in the canyon at any skill level. Your skill level is novice to intermediate. I think that a novice can drive this car and have a lot of fun as long as they understand what their limitation is and they don't try to outdrive the car, because that's going to bite them pretty hard. And I think an intermediate driver is going to essentially have the most fun. They kind of know their limitations. They're going to drive the car and try to find what they feel may be their edge or the car's edge without pushing it too far. So like that 80% rule. And I would consider myself an intermediate, not an advanced driver by any stretch. So all in all, take it with a grain of salt. We appreciate you watching this segment of the video. We are now on our way to Lower Grand, downtown LA. Gonna get some nice drone footage, some driving footage, a little bit of B-roll, walk around, and we will see you there. So we've shown you the exterior footage. You've seen the beautiful body lines of this amazing vehicle. We've given you interior feedback, how it performs. You've seen the acceleration, the handling. We've done a ton of engagement and feedback with the consumers through the IG Lives. Now we want to take you inside and we want to show you the onboard cockpit feel of the interior functionality. So come on in, let's show you what we're working with. You can see how this entry-level model is equipped, what it's going to come with, and what you're getting for your dollar. So for starters, as you enter and you sit in the vehicle, definitely has a lot of similarities and a lot of crossover, or as it's commonly known as recycled parts with the 370Z. So let's just put it all on the table right here. It's a 370 chassis or a very similar variation of a 370 chassis. The interior feels very similar in terms of space and size, headroom, width, and length overall. The overall stature of the vehicle feels exceptionally similar. Now, upon entering the car, the first thing I notice, similarity-wise to the 370, is the door panel region. It's all the same as the 370Z here. We have these little winglets, as I like to call them, in here. These padded, nice bits in here. Very similar to the 370Z. Air conditioning gauges are going to be the same. The shifter region for the manual transmission feels a little bit smoother overall. But again, keeping it to the interior styling, it's all very similar in that regard. The biggest thing that I notice difference-wise when I'm sitting in the cockpit is this region directly here. So the steering wheel itself, it feels a lot more like a Q60, a lot more luxurious in terms of the functionality, the gloss black finish, the beautiful throwback Z logo in the center, and the leather wrap steering wheel feel with the stitching. It definitely feels more refined, a little bit more luxurious than a 370Z. And again, this is the base or sport entry-level model. I refer to base because that's what we're comparing it to for its predecessor. Okay, so starting it up, start button has been moved down to directly in front of the shifter versus the old vehicle, it was over here. The biggest thing you're going to notice directly, right away, difference-wise, is the gauge cluster. We have analog gauges within a digital environment. It's an upgraded display. You're going to have 3 different modes that you can function through this tab switch right here. You're going to press this button here, and it's going to come up with a screen that's going to say change meter view. You'll cycle through sport, normal, and enhanced. So moving over to normal, you're going to have 2 analog style gauges, tachometer to the left, speedometer to the right. And you'll notice as you rev up, as the gauge sweeps, you're going to get a nice white illumination underneath the red needle. In the center, you're going to have the ability to cycle through mileage, refueling, TPMS, which you're not going to get when the car is stationary, your radio functionality through your XM radio or whatever you have on the screen, blind spot awareness, you have the ability to go lane on or lane off, and then a settings feature where you can go through and you can change all of these different custom things within here. So that's pretty cool. And you can back out of there at any time using the back feature on the left-hand side of the steering wheel. So in addition to that, you're going to have your volume up and your volume down, and then the ability to cycle through. When you're in this mode here, this is going to cycle through your radio stations. So then what you're going to do is all of this button is going to do for you over here is allow you to cycle back through to change your meter view, audio source, driver assistance, or personal display. And the third and final mode is enhanced. Personally, not my favorite. This is giving you a larger display in the center, less gauges, and again, to each their own. Let's just cycle through this. So you have a home, a fuel, car functionality, which is on tire PSI, once again, music, and then all your blind spot awareness and your lane changing features, and then your settings. So I'm going to go ahead and move it back to what's been by far and away my favorite since driving it, is the Sport. And we're going to hang out here. What I like about the Sport is we're focusing our attention directly on the tachometer in the center, and we still have mile per hour off to the top right, as well as, you can't see it now and pick it up in the camera, but we have a shift indicator directly above the tachometer. And on the outside, illuminating towards center from both ends, you're going to have green, green, and then it'll go yellow, yellow, both in two blocks, and then it'll finalize with one red in the center. And what you can predetermine on the left-hand side, as we cycle through boost gauge, tire pressure, G-force pad, and then upshift indicator, what you would do is you go in an upshift indicator. You can customize it, and it's showing you there essentially how it's going to look in pre-form. So customization, now you can set your RPM, what you want it to be redline max out. And I believe the rev limiter currently in stock form is roughly 72, 7,300, somewhere in there. So you're always going to want to obviously set it a little bit shy of that. You just have that millisecond or that time that your brain has to react to your fast twitch muscle to being able to shift. So all depending on where you are, you can get it right up on it if you're relatively quick with your reaction, or give yourself a little bit of leeway to work with if you shift a little slower. So we're going to leave it at 77,000 RPM. Now you have two boost gauges, which is kind of cool. It seems a little redundant, but in the event that moving over here to the three iconic pods of what goes back to the 240Z 1969, we have a boost gauge as well there, analog, as well as this digital or analog one within the digital display down here off to the left. So in the event that you were going to change the one in the pod on the far left, you would still retain your boost gauge over here. Your center gauge is your turbo speed, and it goes from 0 to 25 times 10,000 RPM. So at 25, it'd be 250,000 RPM. At 10, it would be 10,000 RPM. Or excuse me, 100,000 RPM. Stand corrected. You have your volt gauge off to the right. That's always good to know. We're roughly under 14 at idle. It's just a very nice, clean setup. Very similar to the Z car, the way it's been for many, many years. They have their little shade hats to obviously, create anti-glare. And then, moving forward, we have our air conditioning vents in the center. It's a nice, compact style feel to it. We have our hazard lights directly in the center. Took me a second to find that the other day when I needed it. And then moving down here, we have our touchscreen radio display. Now this model here does not come with navigation, or we have not been able to find it yet, so I'm fairly certain it does not have it. We have our backup camera. Let's see if we can access that. Okay, so predictive course lines, I don't know what that is, we'll just back out. So we have our phone setting, menu, audio, night mode, so on and so forth, and then you can scroll through, as well as this is touchscreen. So that's a nice touch as well. And then I don't know the actual size of this screen, but it's fairly large. It's definitely an improvement. It's brought it up to date. So there's that, 41,000 entry-level version. I think you're being moderately equipped. I don't think you're really making too many concessions. So in this model, you're not going to have synchro rev in the manual transmission. We have a USB-C, and I believe it's USB 3. Is that correct, Ryan?
USB-C, yes, I believe.
Yep, okay. So USB-C and a USB 3, and this is the wave of the future. Obviously, we're going this direction here. And then this is an iPhone 12 Pro Max, the largest that they still make, even though we're in the 13 iteration at this point. And it fits in here nice. It's not dancing around. You don't have to turn it sideways to get it in like some other vehicles. You don't have to turn it in on its side. It just lays in there. It's a nice little cubby. And I know some of the Samsungs, the Androids, some of those other phones that are slightly a little larger, they can fit in there as well, because we have a little bit of room side to side and front to back. My one gripe with this is that it's not wireless charging. Now, maybe on the newer vehicle or the performance model, it would be wireless charging. So the start switch, it's in black. That's going to illuminate start, stop, engine. It does take a little getting used to that it's down here versus where it used to be on the dash. The shifter region is nice. It's clean. Nice little clean leather boot. It has a matte finish, little brushed aluminum finish. Not everything's glossy or chrome. These two are obviously dummy switches here. There's nothing going on. And the trunk release has been moved to here versus the older vehicle. It was down on the left-hand side. So you do have two cup holders. One is functional when the center console is forward. And then if you just slide that back, you have a second one, which I think is actually kind of cool. I thought that was really innovative to do that and create that they were able to offer us that. So you just pop this open here, and that's obviously exceptionally small. That's not meant to have a ton of things in it. You know, not really much to report on that. Behind us, it's very similar to a 370Z. You have the two little cubbies behind you, and then the styling shock tower brace as well. The seats themselves, we've driven this car around, put about 350, 400 miles on it. I don't feel there's enough back lumbar support. I don't have back issues, but I will tell you that my lower and mid back is a little stiff. So that's something to keep in consideration when purchasing this specific model. The performance model, I would assume, coming with the leather interior, electric seats, it's going to have a little bit more lumbar support. The upper bolster support is pretty decent in this model. We were able to take this through Angeles Crest and, you know, hit the turns fairly spiritedly, and I did not feel I was sloshing and sliding around too much. This model has this cloth feel to it, which I'm really impartial to. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't feel cheap. I like that they broke it up from the rubberized plastic feel of the dash, and it just wasn't continuous. They give you a little bit of styling in here through this cloth. So that was nice. And then as well as these are clean and ergonomic down here. They're more or less identical to what came in the previous Model Z. I don't know what's coming in the upgraded Z, but I would assume that it's going to be the same. It would be nice if these had been updated to go along with this infotainment system, and these were more of a digital feel, or if you still could control it from a knob, but you would have a digital display. And again, anytime you're going to do things like that, you're going to add cost to the vehicle. So understanding what Nissan was doing to try to keep the prices affordable and as close to $40,000 as possible, that's not a make or break it deal for me. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the trunk a little bit. We'll make our way back there. So your trunk release is directly in the center of the hamburger, directly below the Nissan wording. The shock absorbers, they feel a little bit more robust. They feel a little bit more stout to get the deck lit up a little bit easier. And again, this car does not have a spoiler on it, so it doesn't have that added weight. It doesn't have a dovetail. So keep that in consideration as well. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that this is exactly the same size as a 370Z, this trunk space. I don't see why it'd be any different if it's on the same chassis. We have plenty of space for all of our camera gear, what we need to do. We go to Z Days in North Carolina every year, and we have customers and friends that drive up from Florida, Ohio, New York, Missouri, all different places, Colorado, throughout the country, and they've put luggage in this car. You know, you can take this. It's a great two-seater to get a decent amount of luggage to go on a day trip or a weekend trip or even a week trip in the case of Z Days. People have done this for years, and those that have attended know what I'm talking about, and they could attest to that as well. Really not much more to report on in there. You still have the functionality that you could purchase aftermarket for the privacy shade. You just put that in the same location as you would. You clip it in there and you clip it to the window. So if you have things that are high value that you don't want people to see in the back, you could obviously keep those things protected. So let's wrap up under the hood. I know that's technically not interior, but we'll just share that as well. Hood release is in the same location as the previous model. There's no strut braces here, shock braces here to hold the hood up. So you're still gonna have to use the hood prop from the factory. And again, I think they're just doing that to keep the cost down. It's not a make or break deal. Very similar to what you're gonna see in an Infiniti Q60. It's the same motor, right? Maybe some changes in terms of turbos, maybe a little upgraded intercoolers. Air boxes look slightly different. Engine cover's different. It's allotting for space for this strut tower brace, which is not obviously an option or available standard on the Infiniti. Nissan logo, V6 twin turbo, that's a nice little touch. It's obviously adjustable to an extent. And that's a really cool touch that obviously is going to help with the handling. That's going to lock the two strut towers in together, keep everything nice and tidy. I would assume that the Nismo version following suit would have the A-frame that's going to tie it all into the firewall behind it. Everything's very tight, everything's very compact. And that is pretty much about it in terms of the interior feedback on the 2023 Nissan Z.
feel alive, let's hit the dance floor. Don't work too hard, might break a backbone. Return of the Mac, the king is back though. Corvette and cash, I never lack those. She saw the stone, you know how that go. Fatality, my diamonds that cold. Versace trunks, I hit my backstroke. Knock on the door, she at the back, bro. All I really take is a little taste. Island girl, blue eyes with a little bass. Here for the thrill, I don't need a chase. Too crazy and I got bad ones and they ready.
Well, the week has come to an end. Our time with this beautiful 2023 Nissan Z is over. We were able to get a lot of footage, cover a lot of ground, about 500 to 600 miles to be specific. Believe it or not, it's exhausting, and I'm exhausted, and we're exhausted. And it's Friday, May 27th, 2022. The guys are here from the logistics company to take this beautiful ride back. And, overall, I think it's a great car for what you're going to spend. I think it's a great car for the improvements that Nissan's made over the predecessor, the Nissan 370Z. There's definitely room for improvement, and that's always been the case with the Nissan Z. The acceleration's great. The interior styling is great. The updates to the dash and the steering and the infotainment system is great. The power delivery and the torque, awesome. The styling, the exterior styling of the car is beautiful. I think it's probably my favorite Z to date. Definitely over the 370 and definitely over the 350, and that's not a knock because they're both great looking cars. Just really paid a lot of respect to the 240 on the nose and the C-pillar as well as the quarter window, and then to the 300 on the tail. And the 300 has an amazing tail. I think we can all be in agreement with that. Things they can definitely improve upon, and we know that they're going to come in the performance model. The braking system is inadequate. Larger sway bars would be better. Definitely larger wheels and tires, which we know is obviously coming on the performance spec. The gearbox is a little sloppy, a little bit of vibration in there as well. Not having a limited slip differential. Again, these are all things that are addressed in the next model up. But I think overall, bang for the buck for what you're getting. The fact that they didn't cut the power and give you a 300 horsepower version in this model, I think kudos to them, hats off to them for keeping the power plant the same in the two models. So I think you guys all as the end consumer are going to really enjoy the car. If you're a true passionate Z enthusiast and you currently own one, or you've owned one in the past and you've jumped into another market, you definitely might want to consider jumping back into this. I don't think you'll be disappointed, and it is going to be exceptionally mod friendly. Again, I'm Tony with Fast Intentions. This has been a phenomenal week. We're going to sign off now. Thanks for coming along.
I hate goodbyes.
Don't worry, we'll be back soon. We got another one coming. We're going to work on that. We're getting ours coming real soon. A lot of fun.
Let's go to a vehicle wrap shop. It sounds awful. I mean, who would put that on their vehicle? All right, back to topic. So, to each their own.
A few moments later.
Job with the quarter window. You can still hear that piece of all the way from here. That is awful. All right. We have analog gauges into a digital. We have analog gauges into a digital environment. What the my life, man. God. Okay, let me just refocus and get back to where I was.